Hello race fans, it's Kane Jr. and welcome to your race recap for round 5 of the VOR iRacing IndyCar series from Pocono. Your starting grid for today's race: on pole position, Oscar Gonzalez; P2, Julian Altina; P3, Pablo Diaz; P4, Isaac Morris; P5, Matt Huston; P6, Jamie Jackins; P7, Robert Sadler; P8, Ivan Hernandez; P9, Yashish Manhar; P10, Manuel Gomez; P11, Patrick Coro; P12, Michael Shore; P13, Jabriel Garcia; P14, Pablo Chauffeur. As Gonzalez led the field to the drop of the green flag to start the race, it appeared that Pablo Diaz in P3 got off to a fantastic start right behind him, but unfortunately he illegally overtook Julian Altina in P2 before they crossed the start-finish line. That's going to result in a qualification ban for the next round. Behind them, the rest of the grid jockeyed for position heading into turn 1, some of them double file, but they soon settled in for single file racing. It wasn't long before we had our first battle for the lead. Turn 2, lap 1, Pablo Diaz already looking on the outside of Oscar Gonzalez, and that's what Oscar Gonzalez was doing all race long last week. This time Gonzalez finds him on the opposite end, this time on the inside line, the preferred line, as he held on for the race lead. Lap 2 saw Pablo Diaz once again challenging Oscar Gonzalez for the lead of the race. This time he had the inside preferred line as he gets the pass made to take over the lead of the race. Meanwhile, at the end of the field, Pablo Chauffeur gets a little loose and unfortunately collecting Michael Shore, ultimately ending his day. Surprisingly enough, the race still remained green. Exiting turn 3 on lap 3, Isaac Morris greeted the outside barrier with a bit of a kiss. This was just enough for Jamie Jackins to overtake him for P4. The battling for the lead continued on lap 4, as once again Pablo Diaz goes on the inside of Oscar Gonzalez into turn 1 for yet another lead change of the race. Lap 6 saw the race's first caution of the day. Robert Sadler found guilty of this incident, sending Ivan Hernandez into the catch fence on turn 3. The result, a qualification ban for Sadler on next week's race. Lap 7 under the yellow, the entire grid pitted for both fuel and tires, led by Pablo Diaz, Oscar Gonzalez, and then Julian Altina in P3. It was a very close battle in the pit boxes, as it was Pablo Diaz who just beat Oscar Gonzalez out of the pit lane to hold on for the lead of the race. The lap 10 restart was very unfortunate for one driver and fortunate for another driver. The unfortunate driver in this case was Julian Altina in P3, as his restart wasn't exactly the greatest. He was in P3 and fell back a few spots to P5. On the other hand, it was Isaac Morris in the number 69 who was the biggest winner on this restart. He first overtook Altina by capitalizing on his mistake. He moved up to P3, getting in the slipstream of both Gonzalez and Diaz. Gonzalez looked on the outside of Diaz. This opened up a big window of opportunity for Isaac Morris, as he had double the slipstream and the preferred line as he looked on the inside of Oscar Gonzalez, ultimately getting the pass made for P2. Lap 12 saw Oscar Gonzalez work his way back up to the lead from P3, only to be challenged by Pablo Diaz, who took to the outside line to once again challenge Gonzalez for the lead of the race and getting the pass made for yet another lead change. Lap 13 saw Morris kiss the outside barrier for the second time of the race, but he kept the car pointed in the right direction and the race remained green. Just 3 laps later, Morris wasn't so fortunate, this time taking a little bit too much curb on turn 2, hitting the outside barrier, bringing out the race's second caution of the day. On lap 19, the entire grid pitted under the yellow, this time with Oscar Gonzalez leading the way. The pit stop for Patrick Coro wasn't exactly the smoothest, as he locked up the front tires trying to turn into his pit box. As everyone took both fuel and tires once again, it was Oscar Gonzalez who was able to hold on to the lead of the race, but back in P3, Julian Altina with a bit of a quicker stop than Pablo Diaz, able to jump him for P2 and beat him out of the pits. Pablo Diaz timing the lap 22 restart to perfection as he first started on Altana's rear diffuser, then took a left to take the inside line heading into turn 1 from Altana and making the move stick, reclaiming P2. Also on lap 22, an advancement in position for Jamie Jackins as he took to the inside of Yashish Manahar for P4. The battle for the lead between Oscar Gonzalez and Pablo Diaz continued on lap 24, as first it was Pablo Diaz going on the inside of Oscar Gonzalez to take over P1, but Oscar Gonzalez did not give up just then and there as he quickly tucked into the slipstream of Pablo Diaz, giving him the slingshot to go on the outside of Diaz to reclaim P1 and yet another lead change on the race. Morris's misfortunes continued on lap 24, taking a little bit too much curb on turn 3, causing him to slap the outside barrier and taking on major suspension damage on his car. Lap 26 saw 2 more lead changes. Pablo Diaz went on the inside, just as he's done so many times before, to Oscar Gonzalez, and just whenever he thought he had P1 secured, Oscar Gonzalez gives another run at Pablo Diaz, doing as he did to Gonzalez, going on the inside of Pablo Diaz, out-dragging him into turn 1, and this time able to hold on to the lead of the race. Laps 45 and 46 were crucial points in the race. First, Oscar Gonzalez pitting under the green for fuel, and then Pablo Diaz hitting the outside barrier, taking on major suspension damage, causing him to retire for the day. Lap 60, just as Manahar is running comfortably in P3, slaps the outside barrier, loses it, and unfortunately nowhere for Robert Sadler to go. Runs right into Manahar, hitting Manahar so hard, sending Manahar's car through the outside catch fence and bringing out the race's 3rd caution of the day. Julian Altana made his first bid for the lead of the race on lap 64 as he took to the inside of Oscar Gonzalez on turn 2. As per usual, Oscar Gonzalez on lap 66 was not having any of it, not giving up just then and there as he took to the inside of Altana, reclaiming P1. The 2 drivers continued to battle for the lead up until 82 whenever Gonzalez was forced to pit under the green for fuel. But like Gonzalez, Altana too was forced to pit with 11 laps left under the green to take a splash of fuel to last until the end. Just as Gonzalez crossed the line to start lap 91 from P2, Altana exited the pit lane, taking just enough fuel to get him to the end of the race. It looked like Altana was able to hold on to P1, but he was not up to racing speed as Gonzalez took to the outside of Altana and reclaiming P1. Altana got back up to racing speed just in time on lap 92 to stay in Gonzalez's draft, using that momentum to slingshot him back into first place. And from there on out, it was Gonzalez versus Altana for the rest of the way as they constantly battled for the lead of the race up to the checkered flag. On the last lap, it was Altana with the upper hand as he took to the outside line to avoid Oscar Gonzalez getting any of his slipstream, and then out-dragging him on the home straight to take the checkered flag in his 3rd victory on the season. Your results from Pocono: after Julian Altana, it was Oscar Gonzalez in P2, Jackins took home P3, Manuel Gomez for P4, Pablo Chauffeur for P5, Jalbrio Garcia for P6, Robert Sadler took home P7, and then your DNFs: Yashish Manahar, Pablo Diaz, Isaac Morris, Patrick Coro, Ivan Hernandez, Michael Shore, and Matt Huston. Thank you for tuning into this week's race recap. We hope to see you next week in Indy. Take care.